Okay, so we have a few new people. Shu Bing. Hi, is this your first time?
Yes, it is.
Okay, where are you from? Where are you
Singapore.
from? Singapore.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Technical garden.
Ah, how do you get to know of this event?
Oh, I attended your talk that day at the Buddhist Federation.
Oh, okay, the Lion's
I
Roar.
was talking about this one. So today is the last session.
Ah, okay. All right. Nice to have you. Okay, so how about the rest? How about Kok Ching? Can't hear you. Yeah, you're muted.
Evening, Bante.
Hi, good evening.
So I've been with your session since the starting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know, but now how's the practice?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to move from calmness to what Bante was trying to show us, you know.
Okay.
I'm trying to move from being calm into like deeper concentration. I'm trying to tackle that area.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, you know, Bante, I always have this nimittas arising.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to manage that as well.
I see. Yeah, so again, if nimittas arise, depending on what you want to develop, if let's say you want to develop this kind of jhanic kind of concentration to develop contentment of mind, then it's good to ignore the nimittas for the moment and just come back to the object of meditation. Right? But if let's say a person does want to develop something else, then they want to pursue the nimittas, but again have to check the intention first before pursuing the nimittas. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, then Angie, everything okay?
Same, still not developing very well, not progressing much.
Okay.
Yeah, still
All right.
like cannot let go. You say calm already, let go. Let go like a balloon, let go, cannot let go. Still remain at the same stage.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So this one is a common problem for everybody. What do you call it? In the session is one thing. Outside the session is the most important thing in our daily life. How to maintain this right mindfulness. Yeah. So this is more important.
Which means that when we are doing on our own, when we feel calm already, we have to remind ourselves to let go. Is it? We have to talk to ourselves. Is it?
Every moment have to think of this impermanence. Yeah.
Okay, we'll try. Keep on trying.
Okay. No problem. Okay. Ikiat, okay? Can't hear you. I think your mic has some problem. Yeah, I can't hear you. Although you're unmuted. Maybe you need to check your settings. Okay, but then so how about Terence?
Still working hard.
Okay, all right.
Still in the mundane world.
Okay. All right. How about Jen?
Okay, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
I'm okay. I just have this question in mind, right? What is actually the significance of level 4? Because
significance
seems like
of what?
Level 4, the fourth jhana.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because Buddha always, kind of emphasize that you go to level 4 and then after that you go certain thing like, what is your comment, Bante? This number one question. The second question is this: if you have a lot of time in the world, right? At which level you actually spend most of the time? Is it 4 or higher?
Okay, the Buddha himself did all 8. He did all 8. Yeah, all the 8 levels of concentration, but 4, because 4 has the equanimity. 4 has equanimity. So this is the ideal. If let's say, you want to take an exam in school, you want to pass, it's a 50% mark, right? So the level 4 is just nice, 50%. And you want to go higher, of course you can go higher. Yeah. Some people, they want to go lower, or they don't want to develop this concentration. I think that's also fine. There are other methods as well. Yeah.
So let's say you have a lot of time. Actually, what is the most, is your opinion, Bante, which level that you will spend the most time with?
Ideally, depending on which stage you are practicing. Let's say a person is, let's say, mindful of maybe, let's say, reciting a certain mantra, maybe reciting the Buddha's qualities or Buddha's name, then they can enter the formless concentration, probably 5 or 6. Then they can maintain the whole day, recite and do their work, do their chores. Yeah.
Is it the higher the better or not?
There's different levels of calmness, right? But then it depends on how you use the calmness afterwards. Because from 4th level onwards is equanimity. So even 5 to 8 is all equanimous also. And there's a feeling of equanimity as well. So using that stable mind, you need an element of investigation, right? So no point like recharging charging your battery until full, 100%, but you don't use your phone or you don't use your equipment for the right thing.
I see. So I don't know. Is it true that because of level 4 is actually a rupa jhana, right? Meaning you are still it's still attached to the body, right? Then it is good actually to investigate the body itself, or look at
no. If
that?
a person is doing jhanic concentration, they're supposed to sort of withdraw from the senses as much as possible. So if you look at the jhana formula, the first jhana, the opening statement is quite withdrawn from senses. It's not like totally withdrawn, like, you shut off and cannot hear, cannot see, cannot feel, cannot think. It's quite withdrawn. That means you don't get distracted by the senses. Of course, your receptors are still working, right? Your organs are still there, but you sort of don't pay heed, don't pay much attention to those sense stimuli, right? So even the first 4 is the same thing. After going through the 4th level, then you can sort of come out and then investigate the body. All right.
Okay, Bante.
Okay, cool. Okay, it's 8:32 now. So shall we carry on?
Okay. Good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome to MSBS Dhamma Sharing Online. This event is jointly organized by Mahasatthana Buddhist Society Klang and Mudita Buddhist Society Klang, and supported by Theravada Buddhist Council of Malaysia. Today is Tuesday, 25th August, and the time now is 8:33. A few housekeeping rules before we start. Please display your name for easy identification. Make sure your audio is muted at all times. If you wish to ask a question, you may type your question at the chat box. To ask verbally, you may raise hand, unmute, and talk. Please turn off your microphone after finish asking. One person to speak at one time. During the guided meditation, please on your video so Bante can see your progress. The meeting room will be locked during guided meditation session. Okay, MSBS is fortunate to have with us Bante Adhibalo, popularly known as Phra Goh. Bante was born on July 14, 1985. Bhante is bhikkhu ordination into the Theravada tradition of Thai Dhamma sect, Santi Forest Monastery in Johor, Malaysia in 2008. Bhante spent his first 5 sprints retreat in various forest monasteries in Malaysia and Thailand. He is currently the Vice President of Pali Lai Buddhist Temple, Singapore. Today we are continuing from last week, the mindfulness of the breath. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you, Terence, for the kind introduction. So, so now there's an opening chant. So I'm aware we have a friend here, Gilbert. He's a Catholic monk from Philippines. So welcome to the session. Right, so now we have the opening chant. So the Buddhists here can chant. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Suramiraya majjapamadatthana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so good evening to everybody. And now we are sort of in the 3rd lesson of this mindfulness of breathing. Right? So basically the first 2 lessons we covered 16 steps, right? 16 steps of the breath meditation. So there are actually 16 things to do. It's a checklist, or sometimes let's say you meditate, there's problems, you feel tension or you feel stuck, right? You can't get any further, then these are the 16 lists, not 16 things to do to troubleshoot the problem. Okay, so again, short recap, the first 4, back to mindfulness of the body. Okay, so the first 4 steps is basically anchoring the mind to the breath. Anchoring the mind to the breath, because if the mind doesn't focus on a meditation theme, can be any meditation object. So, but for now, because we are using the breath, right? So the attention has to come to the breath. So this is the important thing. If not, the mind will wander. So instead of meditating, your mind is daydreaming and go to wonderland. So the mind will drift off. So it's important to sort of focus on the object. So you have a clear focus in mind. If let's say, usually for a routine, the first step, we do a sweeping of the body, sweeping of the physical body, from head to toe. So this is one interpretation of the body. Then there's another interpretation of the body, which is the breath body, which is this portion of the air that you breathe in and out. And again, there are many schools. Some prefer to feel here, some prefer to feel an abdomen. So again, if you particularly want to choose a spot, let's say if it's down here below the nostril, then you stick to below the nostril. If let's say you choose at the abdomen region, then you just stick with the abdomen. And the whole idea is not to get distracted afterwards, because afterwards, maybe certain parts of the body itchy, you feel certain parts of the body aching or painful, then the mind will want to run to that particular direction. So the whole idea is to come back to that particular spot, right? So that the mind can slowly, we could say, transit from the senses to withdraw from the senses and go into concentration. Okay, next. Okay, and then mindfulness of the feeling. So, so this part with regard to feeling is again, there are mindful of pleasant feelings. So right here, sensitive to rapture and sensitive to pleasure, right? Because in the mindfulness of feeling, the actual Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it is mentioned that feelings have 3 kinds: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. So there are 3 kinds of feelings, but we are not observing all the feelings. So in fact, we are sort of like ignoring the painful feelings. So we are just trying to make the body or the breath as comfortable as possible. So the instruction here is gearing towards appeasing the mind, appeasing the breath and the mind, so that the mind can have the incentive to come together, right? So once the you have pleasant feelings, the mind come together, you settle down, right? Sensitive to mental fabrication. And then once the mind is anchored on the breath body, right? And it comes to this, you transit from the physical breath and you get more sensitive to the emotions, feelings and emotions. Then this is the mental fabrication, right? So whenever the mind wants to wander off, right, you bring the mind back to the meditation object. So eventually the mind will calm down. Okay, next. And the third quartet, that means the next 4 steps, mindfulness of the mind, right? So the mind has lots of activities. So the whole idea of focusing on one object is to calm the mind, so you're able to know the state of mind, right? So it's not just the emotion, is a state of mind, whether is it restless, is it worrying and scattered. So once we focus and the mind is calm with this pleasant feeling, so in our routine we use loving kindness, then the mind will settle down, right? It will calm down, it will steady, right? And then the releasing part will be later. For our routine, we move on to the next 4 first. Okay, then this one is the mindfulness of the Dhamma part, right? So the mind can actually calm down further with focusing on this inconstancy, that means impermanence, rising and falling, birth and death. So this is the whole idea. You will create detachment. You create detachment, because anything that sort of stay for too long, we will cling. We will cling on to that. Right? It's an inbuilt programming in us. When we don't reflect on impermanence, then we will think, oh, this is my body, I will live forever. I will be young forever, and I won't die. So this is normal kind of thinking. So we're actually trying to get back to reality, trying to get closer to understanding the nature by observing and reminding ourselves that it is impermanent. Now, we are not forcing impermanence. When we breathe in and out, it is natural impermanence, but our mind doesn't synchronize with it, right? We sort of like ignore. So we need to educate our mind in this impermanence. So in Buddhist teaching, we normally say our greed or our desire has two forms, greed and hatred. So the first part on the feelings, we calm down the mind with non-hatred, right? Non-violence. That means we use loving kindness to make the mind happy and contented. So this will calm down the mind probably like 50%. So this is the second part, when we calm down the mind using non-greed, thoughts of non-greed, which is thinking of impermanence, right? Because we hoard items, we want things because we think it will last forever, right? So, or we think we will last forever, so we want more and more. So the whole idea of this reflecting on impermanence is to slowly, get dispassion, and then eventually the mind will sort of not react. We call this cessation. Will not react to the stimuli, right? So when we breathe in and out on impermanence, some people try to see impermanence by deliberately, generating the sensations of change, right? So that is a form of reaction, a form of desire. So the whole idea is to sort of sit back, relax, and be a passive observer, observing the change. That means to see things as they really are, as much as possible, as natural as possible. So once this is done for a certain period of time, then the mind will actually become more and more quite passive. That means not reacting. Then we call this cessation of this formation, volition of wanting to react. Right? So once the mind is not reacting, then it will relinquish. It will settle down further, and then it comes back to the previous four quoted, mindfulness of mind. That means it will help the mind to settle further actually. So once the mind is very calm and stable, then this is where the different levels of concentration come in, how to release the mind when it's stable. So I sometimes, when I give instruction, I always give the metaphor, analogy of driving a car. Let's say if a person drives a car or even ride a bicycle, right? They reach a certain speed. There's a limitation. They can ride to a certain speed. And if they want to go faster, they need to change gear, right? They need to change gear and they move on, let's say, to the first gear or second gear. And you increase the speed to a certain degree again, to a certain limit. Then you need to go faster, then you need to change gear and so on. So similarly, the mind have different levels of calmness. So once the mind is concentrated, then we sort of release. It will go to different levels of concentration, like different gears, and it can go to different levels of calmness. Right. So once we cover these 16 steps, then we move on to the next one. So this is also part of this Anapanasati Sutta, right? The mindfulness of breathing teachings in the discourse. Okay, so after the 16 steps, then these are the 7 factors, right? Sounds like very bombastic, 7 factors of enlightenment. So normally it is depicted, the artists will depict as the 7-headed snakes, right? According to the Buddha's life story, after he got enlightened, there's this serpent king, this snake, probably a deity, trying to shelter the Buddha from the rain. So it is not said that it has 7 heads, but it is the artistic impression that they made it 7 heads. So the 7 heads represent these 7 factors of enlightenment. That means 7 qualities, 7 things you sort of need to go through. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to cover one by one. So the first one is you need mindfulness. So we are doing mindfulness of the breathing. So it's just not any ordinary kind of mindfulness, right? Like in the retreat talk, mindfulness, anybody can be mindful of anything, can be mindful of the weather, mindful of how much money in your bank account. So all these are circular kind of mindfulness. So we are talking about spiritual kind of mindfulness, a mindfulness of the this body, feelings, mind, and the DHAMMA. which is the second one, investigation of the Dhamma. Okay, so the second, once a person has this right mindfulness, then you need to keep on contemplating on this investigation of the Dhamma. That means, how does impermanence, contemplating on impermanence, cause the mind to calm down? You need to investigate this. And if, let's say, you don't investigate on impermanence, how does stress or tension arise? So it's actually contemplating on the Four Noble Truths. Right? So whenever there's greed or kind of reaction, then there will be suffering. That's the first Two Noble Truths. And the second Two Noble Truth is when you apply this investigation and right thought, how does it calm the mind? So this is the Four Noble Truths. You need to investigate and sort of be familiar. So what happens is, if a person has the third factor, energy, that means enthusiasm, and when they keep on being persistent, investigating the first three, like normally, let's say if a person just go through a theoretical lecture, right, like right now, if a person just understand, oh, okay, everything is impermanent, everything is non-self, everything is empty, it's theoretical understanding. You can just think of it for a few seconds, and I don't think there's much impact. So the effort or the energy part is to maintain this investigation as long as possible. So in the teachings of right mindfulness, we have to sort of be mindful of impermanence the whole day, except for your sleeping time. So there's a discount for your, so minus the sleeping time. Sleeping time you can just ignore. But as long as we are awake, right, we should be mindful of impermanence. Right? So this is the whole idea. So once these first three criteria is fulfilled, the foundation is set, then when the conditions are correct, that means when greed and desire, greed and hatred is reduced to a certain degree, then the fourth factor will appear. This thing called rapture, that means it's, we call it spiritual kind of happiness, we call it Dhamma joy, right? Once we sort of experience the truth, we get to see the truth of desire falling, then there's a natural kind of joy that arises. You come out spontaneously by itself. You don't have to purposely think or generate this joy. It comes as a byproduct. So the first three, mindfulness to energy, this is the cause, right? Then rapture will be the effect. So once you have this effect, rapture, then it will lead to tranquility, right? The mind is so happy at first. So it is actually a pulling factor for the mind to calm down and come together and settle down. And eventually it will reach tranquility and followed by concentration. So this concentration is not the jhanic kind of concentration. Again, in the talk on the retreat, there are 4 kinds of concentration, right? So this concentration is the wisdom kind of concentration through contemplating on impermanence. So let's say if a person just do this one-pointedness alone without going to any jhanas, they can develop these 7 factors of enlightenment can be done. So even if a person do other kinds of meditation, let's say they do the Asubha meditation, impurities of the body, visualization of the human biology and anatomy, right? If they do it correctly, they also will go through these 7 factors of enlightenment without even going to jhanas. So this is the wisdom kind of concentration. And eventually, the mind will have this equanimity. Equanimity, that means the mind will be balanced. Equanimity, that means not affected by these 8 winds, pain, loss, pleasure, pain, gain, loss, pleasure, pain, fame, defame, praise, blame, right? So the vicissitudes of life won't affect the mind. That means the mind is very stable, very firm and solid, not shaken. So this is called the 7 factors. But this is not the end. This is not the end. This is just a process. That means a person can fall back. Let's say a person very calm. Let's say they investigate from step 1 all the way to maybe step 5, right? Let's say the mind is tranquil, right? Then if let's say they don't guard the senses, it's a high level practice, they don't guard the senses, then they react to the sense stimuli again. Whatever you see, hear, smell, think, taste, touch, very nice visual form, nice sounds, nice music, whatever it is, then you react, and everything gone, back to square one. That means back to before mindfulness. Because the mindfulness slip, and everything gone. So it will sort of go back to no mindfulness. Then you need to work your way up again, right? The desire will rise, right? Then you need to find a way to reduce the desire. And let's say a person from step 1 reach step 7, the mind has equanimity, and the equanimity again is built upon the first 3, right? Mindfulness and all the way to this energy, right? So if a person doesn't continue to be mindful of impermanence, again, this equanimity will be gone, disappear over time. Although it sounds like unshakable, it's unshakable because there's an effort involved to maintain mindfulness. Right? Once this effort of maintaining mindfulness of impermanence is gone, then there goes all this equanimity. You slip back to 0. So this is the 7 factors. So it's a process. It's a chain reaction. So if a person practices correctly, they will experience certain symptoms, certain we call it a spiritual kind of joy, right? All the way leading to certain calmness. So this is the 7 factors. It's a process, right? So it is after, right, practicing this mindfulness for a long time. If let's say a person really can maintain these 7, right, equanimity for 7 days, 7 days in a row, then it's possible. Possible a person can have a breakthrough. That means a person according to the Satipatthana Sutta, either Anagami or Arahant, means the 3rd or the 4th stages of sainthood. That means a person is either quite enlightened or fully enlightened in this level of maintenance. So it is, again, this is the process. So this spirituality thing is something like a tug of war, right? So if a person is able to reduce desire, it's like going against the stream. According to the Buddha's life story, there's this incident, a scenario where the Buddha, before he got enlightened, he was practicing this asceticism. He was fasting and about to die. And after he gave up this asceticism, he took the middle way, right? The moderation, started to eat some food and build up his health. Then he put his alms bowl on a river, on a flowing river, and he made a vow, made a sort of aspiration of a vow, and made a wish that if he is able to find the way to enlightenment, may the bowl flow upstream. May the bowl flow upstream, right? So it's symbolism, right? That it's a struggle, right? The desire is actually the direction of the river, right? Our senses is pulling us along the direction of the current, the river. So it's not easy to go against the stream. So a lot of effort and mindfulness is required to go against the stream. So it's a tug of war. So, but eventually the bowl is able to reach the origin of the stream, the starting point. So it requires a lot of this mindfulness and effort to reach this origin point. Okay, so I've covered basically this Anapanasati Sutta, and it's about 9 o'clock, right? So next week we'll cover another sutta, which is the Dipa Sutta, DIPA, which is something like an extension of the Anapanasati Sutta. It has all the 16 steps, but this Dipa Sutta mentions how does these 16 steps lead to the jhanic concentration, from the first concentration all the way to the 8th level of concentration, right? So we'll cover until here for today, so that we have some time for Q&A, followed by some practical guided sitting session. All right.
Bante, Brother
Yeah.
Gilbert has raised his hands.
Oh, yes. Gilbert, hi. Do you wish to say anything or ask anything? Maybe you pressed by accident. Maybe just saying hi. If you have something, you can speak to the microphone. I don't think your mic is on. Or you can type to me, no problem. Type to my chat. Okay, so while maybe if Gilbert is typing, then perhaps we can open the floor to the rest as well. See who has any questions or any comments on the Facebook.
No question from Facebook.
So this month happened to be the Hungry Ghost month, right? Hungry Ghost month. So there are a lot of unseen beings also in the Zoom over here.
Bante, do you really, I mean, the Chinese believe that in the 7th month, a lot of things happen because of the spirits around. Do you concur with that?
That is the Chinese, the folk religion. They believe the 7th month, the hell gates will open and the spirits will roam around, right? Yeah, but I don't think it's part of the Buddhist cosmological belief. Once a person is sort of in hell, you last quite a long time. I mean, yeah, depends on the karma of the person. If a person sort of get out from hell, then they are sort of reborn in another plane of existence.
But it's true that in the Chinese 7th month, more things seems to happen, I think.
Yeah, perhaps. Sometimes could be psychological. People have the mentality, if it's the community belief, that there are lots of ghosts around, especially in the 7th month. Sometimes they may add unnecessary fear. Maybe they might accidentally cause accidents.
Oh, okay. So it's mind caused by the mind.
Could be, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bante,
yeah.
You see, referring to the 7 factors of enlightenment, Bante says that the concentration is not jhanic concentration. So could Bante elaborate a bit on if it's not jhanic or even the first jhana concentration?
Yeah.
What is it, and what level is it, or what is that jhanic the concentration that is listed in the 7 factors?
Okay, there are. Yeah, there's this particular sutta called the Nirangsa Sutta. It's talking about unworldly or beyond unworldly, right? So you can actually search. There are the peace or equanimity, worldly kind of equanimity. So we have covered in the Brahma Vihara's lesson is called indifference. That means it's our normal kind of neutral feeling, and we sort of like ignore, don't care, right? So this is a kind of worldly kind of equanimity. Then there's a second kind of equanimity called the unworldly kind of equanimity. So this is the jhanic kind of equanimity. And then there's the last one, which is the beyond unworldly. So this one is kind of a lot of wisdom is required to reach this unbinding. So that is the beyond unworldly kind of equanimity. So again, in the previous Zoom retreat, we talked about also there are 4 types of samadhi. So it's clearly mentioned that jhanas is one kind of samadhi, and contemplation on impermanence is another kind of samadhi. Right? So this contemplation on impermanence will lead to a different kind of concentration. So when the Buddha taught these 16 steps of breath meditation, the Buddha is teaching in tandem. It's a combination of jhanic kind of samadhi and also the vipassana kind of samadhi. So there's a combination. Right? So of course there are yogis who don't wish to include the vipassana element, so it will be more taxing, more tedious to enter just pure jhanic samadhi alone.
So, Bhante, is there kind of definitive experience of that concentration? Just like, in jhana, first jhana, it's quite clearly stated the kind of experiences one goes into. So when it comes to this concentration for the 7 factors, is there something is definite that, some people use the word threshold concentration. Is that threshold concentration?
I haven't heard of this term before. How to spell what? Threshold?
Threshold. It means like
threshold. Oh, no. That is more like a commentarial term. But anyway, what happened is, let's say if a person try, even let's say for the first phase of meditation, when we are just scanning the body or visualizing the body going through this birth and death, right? So that is not even jhana yet. So if a person can contemplate on impermanence until there is a certain dhamma joy that arises, right? It's not the sense kind of joy, right? But it's a kind of joy that's reducing this desire. Right? It's based on the reduction of desire, and then this joy will arise spontaneously. So once a person continues to be mindful of impermanence and maintaining this joy, and this joy will dissipate over time, and it will develop into this tranquility, and then eventually lead to this concentration.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, all right, no problem.
There is a question from Sister Goh Shubing.
All right, okay, yes.
She put it into the chat. So Buddhism doesn't believe in the existence of ghosts in the earthly world?
Yeah, in Buddhism, we do have these ghosts, this hungry ghost, part of the Buddhist cosmology. It's part of the samsara, it's part of this cyclic existence. But for the most part, most people can't see them. But for those who happen to sort of experience them once in a blue moon, then probably they might be your close relatives in the past, right, or your distant relatives or whoever. Then they seek marriage. They seek marriage. That means probably you are one of the closest person who can help them. So marriage means doing something good, doing a good deed, and then dedicating it to them so that they can sort of rejoice and get out of this realm. Right? So this is the Buddhist understanding. Okay, so hopefully I answer your question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So we'll. Oh, there's one from Roy. Okay. Hi, Bhante. May I ask if the mind is disturbed during the meditation? How can we bring the mind back to the breath? Okay. If the mind is restless right at the beginning, then this is actually a habitual kind of conditioning. Right? It requires training. Nobody starts off with a purely perfect kind of concentration. If not, we won't be reborn in samsara in the first place. If we are perfect right from the start, then you don't need to come for my lesson. Right? So the whole idea, everything requires training. We start off from the beginner, and after training for some time, and then we can be more proficient. So this is the task, right? Okay, so I hopefully answer your question for Roy and Gilbert. Okay, how long should one practice breathing meditation a day? Wow, okay, so a very good question. So for breath meditation, in the scripture, it's only conducive when it is done in a stationary mode. If, let's say you're seated down, so for the Buddha's case, sometimes he does it even lying down, when he's lying on the floor in the sleeping position, then he might do the breath meditation. Right? There are other kinds of meditation objects which can be done actively throughout the whole day, even when we are working and talking and other stuff. So things like maybe loving kindness meditation, or maybe a kind of recollection of deities, right, or saints. So these are various kinds of contemplation exercises which can be done throughout the entire day. So hopefully that answers your question. Of course, there's no time limit actually, because in the Buddha's time, 2,500 years ago, there's no clock or watch, right? So they won't count by the number of hours or minutes or seconds. So it depends, it's very relative. Once you find your mind is contented and recharged, then you can transit to another mode to train in a different kind of training. Okay, so Anthony, to everybody, does one experience nimitta during meditation? Okay, so this nimitta thing again probably is a commentarial term. Okay, but based from what I understand, if we are using the sense of touch, feeling the breath, then that is actually the tactile kind of nimitta, tactile kind of sensation. So if we're able to feel the various sensations, the hardness and softness, the density, that is nimitta already, right? But of course, some places they teach people to see light, right? They want people to see, bright lights and the kind of stuff. Then that will be a different kind of training, a different kind of concentration. If a person were to focus more on the light, they might lose focus on developing this jhanic concentration, which leads to calmness. So if a person wants to develop this, is engrossed in the light, then it's actually a different kind of practice. Right? So in our session, we actually don't go through this because there might be some risk involved. Right? Sometimes a person do light nimitta for too long, they may, there's a small chance they might develop this thing called the divine eye. That means sometimes they can see ghosts, see angels, see past lives, whatever it is. So this is the nimitta thing. And if a person is not ready, right, they might go crazy. Right? They're unable to handle. Right? It's just like a baby, starting to learn how to walk. Suddenly these things start to appear, and then you might get into trouble if, let's say, you're not in a conducive environment, not in a supportive environment, right? Your family members and friends aren't religious or spiritual, then you might be sent to this mental hospital, yeah? Okay. All right, then the next question from Dean. Hi, Bhante, other than monkhood as the most conducive way to practice, is there a second best way of life that complement a practice that leads to full liberation? Okay, so again, it's a conventional understanding that monastic life is more conducive, which is partially true. A monk's supposed to spend more time in the sort of the spiritual kind of training, but again, in the modern day context, sometimes if monks stay in a city, then they end up doing more work. They do more work. They need to earn the upkeep for the monastery or temple. They need to pay rent, right? So all this requires sort of making a living, right? So again, the conditions are very different from 2,500 years ago. So if you are fortunate to meet, let's say, a forest monastery, then there will be a conducive environment, right? You can just don't care about anything and just meditate, right? There are those city monasteries which are not so conducive. So for a layperson, also the same thing. There's a full spectrum. If let's say you have already reached financial freedom, right? You can choose to live as like a preceptor, you can just stay at home. You don't need to sort of work, right? So you can just you meditate and practice. So in the life of this lay yogi is much better than most of the city monks, right? So this is again very case by case basis, very subjective. Of course, if you're still busy working and have family to maintain, then it's not so easy, but it's still possible. Still possible, right? Again, requires a lot of this effort. Okay, we'll lead to everybody. Okay, Tan Hock. Okay, question from Tan Hock. Must a person be a vegetarian before one can meditate? Thank you. Okay, this is a very subjective question depending on your tradition and community. If let's say your spiritual community practices vegetarianism, then by all means, right? For monastics, like myself, in my particular community, we are considered flexitarian. I just learned this term, flexitarian. You want to make friends with a vegetarian, then you tell them, I'm flexitarian. That means whatever you give, I eat, right? So sometimes you have no choice. The lay devotees, they offer meat, right? Then we just eat meat, right? They put the tapao, meat into and put it in our alms bowl. We have to accept, right? Okay, so but for a lay person, you have the financial power to choose what you want to buy. So it's again up to you. Okay, Sally Wong. Bante, what is the sensation like when one is observing the breathing meditation? Wow, okay, so later in the practical session, I will go through, right? The sensations are very subjective and can change from moment to moment. Okay, Danny, Charlie. Hi, how to chant for animals which are slaughtered for human consumption? How to chant? Actually, you don't need to chant, just mentally send thoughts of goodwill. After you perform some good deed, can be meditation, chanting, doing some charity, whatever it is, when the mind is calm or in a very joyful mode, right? Then you can think of that. Okay, because these beings in the other realm, they never study language. They pick by emotion, they pick by frequency, right? So in our tradition, we chant in maybe let's say Pali language. It is just how do you call it, a formality, yeah? We chant in Pali because currently right now, who studies Pali? Who speaks in Pali? Like nobody speaks in Pali. Okay, so again, it's just our tradition, right? Probably in the Buddha's time, they speak in a certain Indian dialect, and it's meant for them to understand. The whole idea, you need to understand what you're doing, and then the intention is to share this mental frequency with them so that they can pick it up. Okay, when we feel joy or equanimity in meditation, can we experience the surrounding? If yes, are the surrounding in brightness or darkness? Okay. Depending on what kind of joy or equanimity, and also depending on whether if a person has already developed to a certain degree of this divine eye, right? If they can perceive brightness of various individuals or themselves when they enter concentration, then that means they have sort of developed this divine eye to a certain degree. But again, it's not important to have this divine eye. The whole idea is to fulfill the jhanic factors, which we will cover in the next lesson, right? The 5 factors, which light is not included inside, because light is a different kind of samadhi. Okay, all right. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so if there's no other question on the ground, then we can have a very short break. 5 minutes, now it's 9:18 on my clock. So 9:23, we come back so we can go to the washroom, do stretching, so that we won't be sort of hindered in our meditation later. All right, so see you in 5 minutes time. Okay, sadhu. Terence, I see that you made the poster for September already. Very fast.
Catch Bante before you go.
Okay, so now it's 9:23 on my clock. So we are going to start a guided practical meditation session. So now no more theory. So the Tuesday Zoom session, because we are covering like some theory and we don't have much time to do the full meditation routine. Normally in my other sessions, I have like a Monday Google Hangout session where 1.5 to 2 full hours is dedicated to just meditation instructions, so we can do the full range, from the relaxation to the body all the way to the vipassana, open, undirected, unrestricted kind of attention to all loving kindness meditation, right? So now we just restrict to the breath meditation, right? We go by theme, by the topic. Okay, so before we start, we find a comfortable sitting position. Make sure you're comfortable and seated upright. Right, if you do not have a back injury, then you don't need to lie on the back. Oh, there's a question. Where can we find this link? Okay, I will send to you later. I'm trying to find the link as well. Okay, once you're ready, you can close our eyes. Yeah, relax our whole body, relax the muscles. Okay, so in this guided session, because this is sort of a live stream, right? So there's probably lots of audience, and I cannot guarantee, that everybody can calm down at the same rate, right? So if let's say I move on to the next instruction, and if you cannot follow, right, you can remain in the previous instruction. You don't have to follow. But if you wish to follow, yes, by all means. Because since it's recorded on live stream and also eventually uploaded on YouTube, you can replay as many times as you want. If you, let's say you want to, you lose track on instructions, or you want to sort of train on your own. Okay, so now I'm going to proceed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mentally sweep the body from head to toe, from our crown all the way to the toes, by feeling the sensations of the body. Right. So if you want, you can do 2-in-1, visualize a bit like the MRI scan. So from the crown of the head down. So how do we scan, right? So there's a certain mental kind of attitude or mental kind of posture when we perform this sweeping technique. So first is, number one is, we do not cling to all the sensations. Whatever sensation that arises, we do not pull them. That means we don't have greed, neither do we push them away. So that is hatred, right? We do not reject, we do not pull. Right? So how to maintain this neutrality? We just treat all the sensations as passerbys. Right? So whatever sensation you experience from head down, you just wish them well and happy. So to further help you identify what kind of sensations, we generally can classify the experiences into 4 categories called the 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, and water. These are nothing magical. The earth actually represents hard and soft sensations. Fire represents hot and cold sensations. Wind represents fast and slow movements. And water represents moist or dry. So as you feel from the head down all the way to the toes, these various sensations may appear. Or if you feel something beyond that, doesn't matter, right? Whatever sensation that arises, you just wish them well and happy. So it is important to be at peace with all the sensations. So I leave it to your own time to scan the body for a few minutes. Okay, once we are done with the body, at peace with the body, then we can start to feel the breath. So this time we isolate our attention to one small area, one small point. It can be either below the nostril and above the upper lip, one small region, or you can isolate your attention to the abdomen, right? One small region. Right? You don't have to feel the entire breath coming into your windpipe and your lungs, right? Just one small point. Once you stick to that particular point and you stay with it throughout the entire breath meditation. So this is not a forced or coerced kind of directed attention. It's a gentle attention, and there's no need to control the breathing. Let our in and out breath be our natural reflex action. So we add thoughts of loving kindness when we inhale, right? Whenever there's inhalation, we wish the breath well. Whenever there's exhalation, we wish the breath happy. Right? So there's no need to control the in and out breath. However fast or slow, long and short, doesn't matter. So this is the first and foremost important step to make friends with the breath. So for those whose minds are more sensitive, you can feel the four elements rather than the breath. Then by all means you wish the four elements that arise well and happy, whichever appears faster. So the whole idea is not to struggle or fight with the breath. Any form of control is something like violence. Violence to the mind, violence to the breath. So we're actually training non-violence. Inhale well, exhale happy, until the mind becomes calm. Some meditators have the habit of fixating the mind, right? Trying to force the mind. This is the issues with a lot of meditators, because when we sort of force or coerce the mind, we're actually producing this desire. So the more we want the mind to be still, then the more the mind gets agitated, more stressed. So we focus more on the loving kindness. Inhale well, exhale happy. We focus on the cause and the conditions, and the effect will be that the mind will settle naturally by itself as a byproduct. Okay, and if your mind is calm and sort of contented, right, then this is the platform for the mind to receive the truth, receive the teachings of impermanence, get in touch with reality, get in touch with change. Right? That's introducing the other thought, which is non-greed. So whenever we breathe in and out, there's a very micro cycle of birth and death, rising and falling, impermanence, inconstancy, whatever you call it, just a mental reminder. Right? So when you breathe in and out, right, the four elements go through this birth and death. So how does these four elements go through birth and death? Right? So if we breathe in and out, if we feel the density, the hardness and softness change when we breathe in and out, then that's the birth and death of the earth element. If we feel any change in temperature, hot and cold, when we breathe in and out, then there's some birth and death of the fire element. And if we breathe in and out and we feel there are changes in the breathing rate, the speed of the air, then there's a birth and death of the wind element. And if we breathe in and out and we feel there are changes in the humidity, then there's a birth and death of the water element. So again, there's no need to purposely generate the sensations, whichever sensation that arises first, then you just take note. So every moment, just take note, which one arises, which one arises, which one arises. Yeah? So don't cling on to any of them. The whole idea is to observe them as naturally as possible, to understand the mind and the breath, and see them as they really are. continue to be mindful of this arising and passing away until the mind settles, till it cannot settle any further. That is to say that the mind becomes stable, and you settle until it becomes stable. I call this the stability point. So the observing or the contemplation of impermanence will make our mind like Teflon, non-stick. And if our minds are at the stability point, right, once the rate of settling is so negligible, then you can enjoy this experience of calmness. Basically, it's to remember this emotion, important, remember this emotion, and also not forgetting to be mindful of this impermanence of the breath. So two things, mindful of emotion and mindful of the impermanence of the breath. So the emotion part is used to be like a control setting so that we can differentiate the different levels of concentration later. Okay, once you have tasted this experience of this base level, you need to fulfill these two criteria. First is you have remembered this emotion. Number two, criteria number two, the mind has to be calm. So once you have fulfilled these two criteria, then if you wish to proceed, right, then you can sort of change gear, you can up the gear. So how to do that? So we make a wish in our mind, make an aspiration. May I let go of this state of mind, just like a child letting go of a balloon. So once we release the mind, right, the mind will evolve naturally by itself to another level. So what we need to do is just sit back and don't need to exert anything. Just observe the transition of the mind. So once the mind has transited from ground level to the first level, then there will be obvious change of emotion, right? If you've done it correctly, a pleasant emotion will manifest. And the ground level is bland emotion. So once you reach the first level, a pleasant emotion will manifest. So you just be mindful of this emotion and also be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. So mindful of two things. So continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath until the mind reaches a new rate of calmness. Okay, once the mind is relatively settled or reached a stability point, then you can enjoy this first level of concentration. And basically, it's to remember this emotion and also not forgetting the impermanence of the breath. So two things, yeah. Okay, once you have tasted the first level of concentration, make sure you have fulfilled the two criteria. Criteria number one is that you have remembered this emotion of the first level. And criteria number two, that the mind has to be calm. And you may choose to remain, or if you want and you think you're ready, then you can proceed to increase the gear. Right, so we do the same aspiration. May I let go of the first level of concentration, just like a child letting go of a balloon. So once we release the mind will actually evolve naturally by itself like a spring. You don't have to do anything. You just need to observe the transition. Okay, once the mind has reached the second level of concentration, right, a new kind of pleasant emotion should manifest. If you've done it correctly, then you just be mindful of this new pleasant emotion and also continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath until it reaches a new rate of calmness. Okay, once the mind has reached this constant rate of calmness, right, that means the mind, the rate of settling is so negligible, and you find the mind stable, then you can enjoy this second level of concentration. Basically, is to remember this emotion and also not forgetting, be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. Right, so two things, emotion and impermanence of the breath. Okay, once you have tasted the second level of concentration, make sure you fulfill the two criteria. Criteria number one, you have taken note of the emotion of the second level, and criteria number two, that your mind has to be calm. Right, so you have two options, either to remain at the second level, or if you want, you can proceed to increase the gear. So if you wish to proceed, then you can make a wish to let go of this mind, just like a child letting go of a balloon. Once you release the mind, and the mind will evolve naturally by itself, like a spring, so we don't interfere, we just let it evolve by itself as we observe the transition of the mind. Okay, once the mind has reached the third level, right, then another kind of pleasant emotion will manifest. So you just be mindful of this emotion, and simultaneously be mindful of the impermanence of the breath until the mind reaches a new state of calmness. Okay, and once the mind has settled down, you find the mind is calm and stable, and you can enjoy the third level of concentration. Basically, it's to remember the emotion of this third level when the mind is calm, and also not forgetting to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. And the impermanence of the breath is like the acceleration pedal, so you don't suddenly release it. Don't suddenly let go. So maintain this mindfulness of both things. Okay, once the mind has tasted the third level of concentration, and basically you need to fulfill the two criteria. Criteria number one, you have taken note of the emotion on the third level, and criteria number two, that the mind has to be calm. Right, once you have these two criteria, then you can choose to remain there, or if you wish, you can proceed to increase the gear. And what we can do is make a wish to let go on the third level of concentration, just like a child letting go of a balloon. So the mind will actually evolve naturally by itself, just like a spring, and we don't need to interfere. We just observe the transition of the mind. Okay, once the mind has reached the fourth level of concentration, and if you've done it correctly, it will be a different kind of emotion. It is called equanimity, neither joyful nor happy. Right, so it's like a different kind of emotion, something like very refreshing and new for those who are first timers. So you just be mindful of this new emotion called equanimity and continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath until the mind reaches this new rate of calmness. Okay, once mind has settled down or reached a new rate of calm, then we can enjoy the fourth level of concentration. Basically, is to remember the emotion and also not forgetting to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. So in the Buddhist Eightfold Path, the path number 8, which is right concentration, is defined as these 4 levels of concentration, or the 4 jhanas in the Pali language. So the reason being the 4th level is because of this equanimity is used to sharpen the mindfulness or purify the mindfulness. So it's a bit like charging the mind with the battery. But of course, this is not permanent. This battery will dissipate over time if we get up of meditation. So there are other forms of training to sort of save the battery, change the mind into the battery saving mode. But for now, due to a time constraint, we are going to proceed to reverse the order. All right. So once you have fulfilled the 2 criteria of the 4th level, and make sure the mind is calm and you have taken note of the emotion, then we go down to the 3rd level and make a wish to go down. So as we observe the transition of the mind, and we also continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. And once we are at the 3rd level, make sure you fulfill the 2 criteria, right? The mind is calm, and you have taken note of the experience of the 3rd level. Then you can make a wish to come down, lower the gear to the 2nd level. So as we observe the transition of the mind, we continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. And once the mind is at the 2nd level, make sure to fulfill the 2 criteria. Right? Then the mind, you've taken note of the emotion on the 2nd level, and also the mind has to be calm. Important, if not, there will be energy stuck. And the reason of this calm and settled mind is a measurement of detachment or non-clinging. So once you have fulfilled the 2 criteria, then you can make a wish to come down to the 1st level of concentration. So as you observe the transition of the mind, continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. Okay, once the mind is at the first level of concentration, make sure and you fulfill the two criteria. You have taken note of the emotion of the first level, and also the mind has to be calm. Right, so once you fulfill the two criteria, then you can make a wish to come down to base point, right, back to the one-pointedness. So as we observe the transition of the mind, and we also continue to be mindful of the impermanence of the breath. Okay, so once you're at the ground level, make sure it's a bland emotion, no more pleasant emotion, and the mind have to maintain calm, right? And then we can proceed to feel the entire body. That means start to feel the fingertips, feel the toes. No need to focus on the breath anymore. Come back to the sense sphere. Right, so as we recondition the mind, our cognitive function back to the normal setting, right? The whole idea is to maintain this calm and peace. It's the same concept earlier on. We restrict the mind to one small area and the breath, right? So now the mind is unrestricted, but the concept is still the same. Right? The mind can be all over the place, but whatever sense stimuli we are in contact with, we need to be aware of impermanence and make sure the mind is calm and settled. Whenever we react to any sense stimuli, any agitation, then there will be tension and suffering. Right? So it's basically maintaining this calm. Okay, so with that in mind, we conclude today's session. We can open our eyes once we are done. Okay, so now it's 10:11. Any problems or questions on the ground? No, going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay, so any question next session? Next we can ask. Okay, so we can conclude with the chant, dedication chant. Okay, so this is the Buddhist practice when we have sort of performed meritorious actions and doing something good, then we can dedicate them to unseen beings. Right? It can be guardian spirits or the hungry ghosts. Right? So this is the chant. So those who wish to chant along can follow. Akasata ja bhumata devanaga mahitika punyang tang anumodetva chirang rakantu loka sasanang etavata ca ampehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe buddha sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Transference of merits to the departed. Idang minyatidang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang minyatidang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang minyatidang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Aspiration imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yawa nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, this ends the today's session.
Thank you, Bante, once again. So gentle reminder, next week will be beginning of the month of September already.
Oh,
Very
okay.
fast.
Very fast.
So we still haven't enlightened yet, not 7 days.
It's a
Okay.
continuous 7 days, not separately.
Sadhu, Bante. So
Okay.
thank you once again for accepting MSP's invitation. So we'll see everyone again next week. Same time, same place, and Zoom.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Sadhu.